When in London, we have the opportunity to visit the site of Shakespeare's own Globe Theatre, built in 1599. It accommodated up to about 3,000 spectators crowded in, most of them standing in front of the stage. To get into the theatre, you had to pay a penny. This money was put in a box. That's why we have the term box office. If you paid another penny, you could get out of the sun or rain and stand in one of the gallery places. And for another penny, you would be given a chair with a cushion. If you had a lot of money, sixpence at that time, you could get one of the seats behind the stage, or possibly even on the stage. The view was terrible, but it was great in terms of having people see the beautiful clothes that you were wearing, which evidently was an important part of the experience of the theatre at that time. The theatre had no artificial lighting, and it had no sets of the kind with which we're familiar today. It had a chair or a bed that could be brought on and off the stage, but nothing like we're accustomed to today. There was a platform with male-only actors who must have developed very powerful voices. They had to be able to speak their plays out and be heard by 3,000 people in that round space. However, as you can see in the picture, the theater was not simply a flat stage. It also had two columns that held up a canopy over the playing space. This canopy was important for several reasons. First, the most valuable property that the players owned were costumes, especially because on a stage without sets, costume carried huge symbolic meaning. The canopy, therefore, provided protection for the actors, so they wouldn't have to stand out in the rain. But there was another symbolical association with that canopy. Often it was painted with stars and conveyed the idea of the heavens. Just as there was heaven above the stage, there was a hell below the stage. That hell was the space under the stage, but accessible through a trap door that could be opened on the stage. As you can imagine, this space was used on many different occasions, most notably in Hamlet. The scene, when Hamlet hears the ghost moving like a mole, would have been done using this space below the stage. One of the most interesting questions you might come upon when considering Shakespearean theatre is how to represent the ghost. Where does he come from? What does he look like? As I mentioned, in the 17th century there was no artificial lighting in the theatre. Distinguishing between the ghost and other characters on the stage must have been therefore quite hard. Thanks to what is called a prompt book, we have a good idea of what the instructions for portraying a ghost were like in the time of Shakespeare. The ghost would always be represented as if coming from a very mysterious place. Oftentimes, a specific sound effect would be played to make the audience realize that the ghost is coming on stage. They would also often use a particular material or color to emphasize the ghost's supernatural transparency. The last thing we will look at are the differences between the theater during the time of Shakespeare and now. Back then, acting was not highly paid or respected. Actors were often seen as troublemakers who promoted hard living and sin. As we know, women were not allowed to act until 1660. Female characters were played by teenage boys who hadn't gone through puberty yet. Going to the theater was not considered to be a fancy occasion either. By modern standards, plays were often crude. Poor people, or groundlings as they were called, would frequently talk, shout, and even throw things during the play. Also, most plays were played at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is quite a difference from the theater we know today. But if you are ever in London, you should definitely considering Shakespeare's Globe.